Today we are trying to do things a little differently. We've done a series of talks with Shishir and Nikki earlier, as you would have seen, on HR. Today we thought we'll pick up something more relevant, slightly more topical that our users can listen to. So we decided to get in Arvind, and we are going to pick his brains on marketing. You heard that right, marketing and not sales, right? Long drawn, strategic, etc., etc., whatever comes to mind. uh, Bala or Arvind, whichever way you decide to call him, comes with a very rich marketing background across services, across geographies. So he's seen Southeast Asia, he's seen the Middle East, and now he's in Americas, Canada to be precise. Uh, so Bala, if you can just raise your hand, since you're the only one on the screen, we'll still see you. Okay, so
There you
that's
go.
Bala. I'll hand it over to him to give a brief about his profile before we jump headlong into the conversation.
Thank you, Pandey. Um, so thank you for this opportunity to have a chat with you today. So my experience or my passion lies in all things marketing, and there's of course I've got about 20 plus years of depth and breadth in marketing. My foundation is really pricing, so that's where my marketing career began a couple of decades back. But then I did switch over to sales and got some exposure on the sales side of things as well. So had this immense opportunity to work across different parts of the world to really see how cultural nuances affect that as well. So really excited to be here today.
Sure. Thanks, Bala. So, my opening question is, the moment we think of marketing, and for somebody like me, who's a founder of a business, and most of our clients, marketing is essentially limited to brand equity, that I read in Economic Times every Wednesday, right? Or if I'm more TV friendly, it's Mad Men, right? I watch the serial and I get some aspects, some insights into what marketing is. For those of you who are more Indian oriented, maybe a Piyush Pandey or Ogilvy's, etc. of the world. Essentially a game for the big players, right? You have a lot of money, you have a big brand, you play the marketing game. What I would want to understand is, is any of it relevant to small and medium businesses?
Yeah, so marketing is, to your point, it's a very broad term. It's very loosely used from marketing, from sales. I mean, marketing to one end of the spectrum being sales and making and closing a sale, to the other end of the spectrum, which is advertising and brand building and brand equity, to your point. So um, rather than defining what marketing is and whether it's relevant to small to medium enterprises, this is the way I'll answer it, and I'll draw upon the very famous modern management guru, Peter Drucker. So this is what he said. He said a business has one purpose, and that is creating customer, and it has two functions. So we'll get to the two functions later, but just let's stay with a business has one purpose of creating customer. So this kind of defines um, whether you're a small to medium enterprise or you're a startup, just a fledgling starting off, or you're an established brand. If you get this nuance of you are in the business of creating a customer, then all of a sudden it becomes relevant, right? Uh, and then he goes on to say it's two functions. So business has one purpose of creating customer and two functions. And the two functions are innovation and marketing. And this is really, really relevant to what we're talking here today. So when Peter Drucker says innovation, it's all about operational excellence and creating a radical differentiation in terms of creating your product or idea or service. And marketing is not sales. It's not peddling the product or service or idea. It's about positioning and presenting your product to a relevant audience. So I think if you define it or if you have that as a framework, it is absolutely relevant to small to medium enterprises.
Sure, and I think this makes a lot of sense, because the point that you raised about the purpose being creating a customer, lot of and I'll make this a slightly India centric question, is a lot of times we see people spending a lot of times in designing a great product, right, which is well thought of, has a lot of features, etc. But as they say, when the rubber meets the road, a lot of my friends, colleagues who've been founders, they realize that, how do you actually communicate that to the customer? Is that something where marketing can potentially step in and help them?
Yes, the short answer is absolutely. Marketing has a role to play uh, once the product is ready and defined. But marketing also has a role to play as the product is being designed. And let me elaborate a bit more on that. So you did mention that a lot of effort is put in terms of design thinking and creating of that product or idea. I think one core purpose, going back to Peter Drucker's previous definition, was business as one purpose of creating customer. So if the product is being designed with that end consumer in mind, then marketing has a role to play. It could show up as identifying the customer. It could show up as customer research. It could show up as product market fit, and all of those are possible facets of marketing. To really, the way I think about it, to reduce the jargon and to really get to the crux of the problem is when a product or an idea is being defined, is it solving for a bleeding neck problem? And this really would help product creators um, come up with an idea or market an idea which is easy to gain traction. And what I mean by bleeding neck problem is understanding the customer so we know exactly what the huge pain points are, and then ensuring that the product that is being designed is relevant to that small minimum viable market or minimum viable audience, and ensure that product is ready to be consumed by that small audience. And if it's solving a bleeding neck problem, then the advantage of that is once a product is launched, there's very little sales, and in quotes sales, that needs to be done, because the product is going to get readily consumed because it's an ideal fit. So I think it certainly has marketing certainly has a role to play once the product is ready, but more importantly, marketing has some relevance or a lot of relevance in the early stages as well of product creation.
Sure, thanks. And I think that's a very relevant point that you raised of a bleeding neck problem, because a lot of times what we have experienced is in our romantic attachment, if I could use that word, with defining the problem, we end up creating a space shuttle for the customer wherein the expectation was only of a cycle with 21 gears. Yeah. So yes, and that's where we tend to struggle, because call it product market fit or what have you, is when the pricing starts to pinch the customer, we realize that they are not ready to pay, and then the kind of disengagement with the customer happens, that the market is not ready, customers don't understand the larger benefits. uh, and I guess I was watching this movie, Jobs, which is the biography on Steve Jobs, and the first version that he's trying to sell, or make the pitch land, is just an assembled computer at the end of it, right? So a lot of times, I guess where we get confused is we try and create the end product, which is the Mac, right? But what we fail to realize is Mac took a couple of years to come by. It was not the first thing that they came up with. So that's pretty interesting. What I would like to also touch upon is, you've seen various continents, right? So you've seen India for sure, you've seen Southeast, you've seen Middle East, and now you're watching Americas. So looking at various economies, which in some sense are ahead of us. When I say us, I mean India, in terms of the economic development and hence the customer behavior. Is there something that Indian firms can possibly learn from them in the SMB segment in terms of how to tap into customer behavior better? And I'll just add one more line to my question. One thing which strikes me very well about Americas in general, starting from Canada, ending at Mexico, is the heavy thrust on marketing in almost all aspects of life.
Right. So two parts to your question. The first one is marketing any different in different parts of the world and geography? The way I would answer it is, at the end of the day, you're catering for a human need and desire. So it's not at the root of it, at the crux of it, it's not very different. I think marketing is a fairly new discipline or new science, say 50, 60 years, or give or take. So it's certainly not evolved or as established as the human and social behavior itself, which has taken us centuries and thousands of years. So I think irrespective of where you are in the marketplace, one of the things that I've observed in working with various global organizations in different parts of the world is the basic principles are fundamentally the same. Every consumer is looking to interact with a product or service with the jobs to be done in mind. And I'll elaborate this with an example of this jobs to be done idea with an example of a 2-inch drill bit. So, a lot of product creators get too enamored and too caught up with the product and idea of how that 2-inch drill bit should be designed, how it should be branded, how it should be packaged, and how it should be presented. And you almost have this romantic fantasy about creating this 2-inch drill bit. But really, when the consumer goes to a Home Depot or a large hardware store to buy a 2-inch drill bit, they give very little thought about the product design, et cetera, et cetera. At that point, all they're looking to do is all they're looking for is a solution to have to hang their picture frame. So they're looking for a 2-inch hole in the wall, whereas the product creator is really enamored by the 2-inch drill bit set. So that is what I mean by product market not fitting, right? Product not fitting in the market. So right from the inception, if a product is designed with the end user in mind and what they're looking for to solve, then the way we would think about product creation itself becomes very different. So bringing that into the context of how North America is always so focused around marketing is because I think North America is in a different end of the spectrum in terms of consumption, right? So there are more access. There's far more access to products and products in the marketplace. You walk into a supermarket or a store, and there's so many varieties of the same product in different shapes and forms and labels and brands that has become extremely crowded. And as it's getting extremely crowded and cluttered, it becomes even harder for products to stand out. So the focus on marketing and radical differentiation and positioning really is the forefront that's playing. And it's happening at certainly in North America more so, but it's happening across the globe. I mean, you look at any market, emerging markets, India or elsewhere, it's the same problem, but it's not as compounded as yet. So I think there's a huge opportunity in markets like India to really differentiate the product. Now, I'm not suggesting it's easier to differentiate in markets like India, but certainly the opportunity or upside is far greater to differentiate a product in India or in emerging markets than in North America, where it's very cluttered and crowded today. So it gets harder to differentiate.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. That makes sense. I would like to draw your attention to something which is more here and now. So a lot of my customers or clients that I speak to tend to focus a lot on sales. The reason for that is sales is more here and now. You put in efforts, you see the requisite returns or not, either ways in a shorter duration time frame. The common perception is marketing is more long drawn. Is that true? Do you think it can be shortened, or are people approaching it differently or wrongly in that sense?
Yeah. So the short answer is there is no silver bullet, right? So and what I mean by that is, if a product is an average product for an average market, then once the product is designed and out in the market, there'll be considerable amount of time being spent on sales, because it's harder to sell that product and sell within quotations again. And the reason for that is really the product needs to be, it's not an ideal fit, and therefore you're reaching out to a larger market now, and therefore I think the key differentiator becomes largely price, because you're competing with other products of similar features and benefits, right? So the only differentiating factor becomes price, which is classic case of commoditization. So the other way to look at it is, what marketing solves for is, it's not a growth hack. It's not a silver bullet. What marketing solves for is a deeper problem, which is two parts. Where are you in the journey? So if you were to look at an early stage product or service or early stage startup, there the upside of marketing is huge. So you can probably make increase your revenues by 20%, 30% fairly rapidly, because it's a low hanging fruit. You're in early stages of growth, and that comes fairly fast, to your point. But if you're an established product and you're in the later stages of optimization, there the a 10% growth is going to be harder. It's like there are maybe 100,000 people who can run run 100 meters in 10 seconds across the globe, but there may be just 5 people who can run the same 100 meters in 9.9 seconds, and then even fewer in 9.7, and I think 9.79 is the world record. So that's the whole analogy of where you are on that cycle, and what the upside of marketing is. So it is certainly not, I would not say it's long drawn, but the upside of marketing is different for different stages of the business in different markets.
Okay. So like everything is going digital, and it's almost a cliche, digital marketing, what are your thoughts on that? And I love that smile, because it's somewhere between a cliche and a 4-letter word as of today. So what are your thoughts on digital marketing?
Yeah, I don't know what digital marketing is, quite honestly, because it is digital is just a channel. So it is marketing on digital. It's like saying print marketing, or it's like saying chat marketing, or it's just a channel, right? Or WhatsApp marketing. It's not a discipline in itself. Marketing is a discipline, and digital is just a channel. A lot of the same principles applies. The marketing principles applies across channels. But what's interesting in digital is it's attributable, it's measurable. So 20-25 years back, the television was a mass medium, and that's where most of the marketing or most of the advertising and branding used to happen. So which was a mass medium, it's hard to measure. If you run an ad in Super Bowl or some major IPL or something like that, ad for say Hershey's bar, it's not like during halftime the sales for Hershey's goes up. It's not directly attributable, and it's hard to measure. But digital allows us to measure, right? So what's happened in the past 20 years is really, even though internet today is being consumed far more than television has in its own entire lifetime, it's still not a mass medium. It's still a micro medium. It's still, there's no global World Wide Web page where everyone can go and will see the same thing. There are hundreds and millions of websites, right? So that's the beauty of internet, and that's the beauty of digital. If I was to add marketing to that, it's really attributable and measurable marketing. That's really what digital marketing is, but certainly a very interesting space.
Sure, thanks. So one thing that I would like to ask for our users, and probably the last question, keeping the time in mind, is anything that that we can that our listeners can deploy here and now, and look at it, and it'll give them a fresh new insight, rather than the whole long drawn thing. Any tips that you have, quote unquote?
Great question, Sushant. And I don't know if it's a tip or it's going to be anything radical that you've not heard before, or our audience here has not heard before. But it's a simple act of have conversation with your customer. It might seem like a radical thought for some, but just get out of step away from our computer desks and offices and what have you, and have a conversation. And the conversation doesn't have to be a very prepared conversation. It doesn't have to be an interview. It doesn't have to be a survey. Just pick up the phone and speak to, say, 3 to 5 customers, recent customers who bought your product or your service. If you are in FMCG, then step out into your retail space and see who's picking up that carton of orange juice that you're trying to sell, and see what goes on behind. It's just a casual conversation, because more than any of the stuff we've spoken about in these past 10-15 minutes, I think if there was one single thing one could immediately do and glean a lot of insights from, is really having these 3 to 5 conversations with your most recent customers.
Sure, and I'll extend that because I'm personally very intrigued with this because it's almost surprising with the number of channels which are open to have a dialogue with the customer, be it Facebook or Twitter, or a LinkedIn. I still see a very one-sided, pushed-out communication to the customer saying this is who we are and this is who we sell, versus and engaging. It's almost like using a social media like a 1.0 web platform. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Sushant. I think internet and the digital social touch points has given us, every one of us, access and voice. And what it's led to is a lot of voices and a lot of people not exchanging dialogues, but just sharing information. And everyone believes that what they're saying is reaching out to hundreds of millions of ears, which probably it is, but certainly it's getting lost as well between the years. It's not hitting or resonating with their minds, right, with the consumers' minds. So I think more is not always impactful. So sometimes it's just picking up the phone and having a real conversation, not a digital conversation. And I've got nothing against digital. I think it's a great medium, but just having a one-on-one conversation with 3 to 5 customers of yours will really glean some insights in terms of understanding what keeps them awake. What is the reason why they bought your product? What made them make that decision? It could be something really insignificant as, it was just, I was just trying your product. I just wanted to see what's different. Or it could be like something insightful that, it's the specific attribute of your product which really resonated, or I'm picking this product up and I use it because in my community, all the runners in the community, if you're an athlete, use this. So there could be an aspirational reason, there could be a feature benefit reason, or it could be just what was reachable and accessible. So those kind of insights really come out of such conversations.
Sure. Thanks, Bala. We would love to continue this conversation probably in our next series and go into detail of it. But I think very, very helpful. Thanks for taking the time out. I know it's still very early in your time zone. So thank you, and we'll continue with this conversation. I will share the snippets of this video as well as the whole conversation on our LinkedIn page. Feel free to visit it, and since Arvind will be tagged on that, you could reach him out on LinkedIn as well for further insights.
Thanks, Pandey. Always pleasure connecting with you. Have a good one, mate.
Sure. Thank you.